What if Iran discovered that it did not need to defeat the United States or Israel on the battlefield? What if it only needed to close one narrow waterway and make billions of people pay for the conflict? Imagine that, beginning tonight, oil tankers stop moving through the Strait of Hormuz for 30 consecutive days. Around 21 million barrels of oil normally pass through this route every day, roughly one-fifth of global petroleum consumption and one-quarter of all oil traded by sea. 30 days could trap more than 600 million barrels behind the world's most dangerous oil gate. The question is not whether prices would rise. The question is who would begin breaking first. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel because we follow the invisible connections between war, energy, inflation, and the money leaving your pocket. During the first hours, tanker captains would receive warnings to avoid the strait. Shipping companies would cancel voyages, while insurers demanded enormous premiums or refused to cover vessels entering the Persian Gulf. Oil traders would react before shortages reached petrol stations. During the recent disruption, Brent crude climbed as high as approximately $126 per barrel before later falling as hopes of de-escalation returned. The first direct victims would be the Gulf oil producers themselves. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have pipelines that bypass Hormuz, but their combined alternative capacity is only about 4.7 million barrels per day. That is nowhere close to replacing the roughly 21 million barrels normally passing through the strait. Iran would also lose export income, while Qatar's liquefied natural gas shipments could become trapped inside the Gulf. But the first major shock outside the war zone would strike Asia. Around 89% of the crude oil and condensate moving through Hormuz normally travels to Asian markets. China, India, Japan, and South Korea together receive approximately 74% of those flows. Refineries would begin consuming emergency inventories, governments could subsidize fuel, and factories would face higher electricity and transportation expenses. Countries with large reserves might survive the first weeks. Countries with weaker currencies and limited financial protection could feel the crisis almost immediately. The first country pushed toward economic crisis might not be Iran, Israel, or the United States. It could be an oil-importing country thousands of kilometers away that had no role in starting the conflict. When oil becomes more expensive, airlines pay more for jet fuel, trucking companies pay more for diesel, and farmers pay more to operate machinery. Businesses then transfer part of those expenses to customers. Suddenly, the Strait of Hormuz is no longer only an oil story. It becomes a food price story, a transport story, and eventually, an inflation story. The disruption could also affect fertilizer shipments, threatening future harvests rather than only today's fuel supply. Poorer households would suffer most because food and transportation consume a larger share of their income. Europe could then experience another energy shock, while central banks faced an impossible choice. Lower interest rates could support struggling businesses, but they might also allow inflation to accelerate. Keeping rates high or raising them could control prices but weaken investment, housing, and employment. The United States would be less directly dependent on Hormuz oil than Asia or Europe. But American consumers would not escape because oil is priced in a global market. American producers might earn larger profits while American drivers, airlines, and delivery companies paid more. After 30 days, even reopening the strait would not immediately restore normality. Hundreds of tankers would compete for access, ports would face congestion, and insurers could continue charging a war risk premium. The fear could remain inside every barrel long after the first ship passed safely. That is the real power of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran does not need to control the world's oil. It only needs the ability to threaten the route connecting Gulf producers to their largest customers. One narrow waterway can influence what billions of people pay for fuel, food, transportation, and electricity. If attacking Iran risks closing a route carrying 1/5 of the world's oil, is that protecting global security? Or gambling with the cost of living of billions of innocent people? Choose one side in the comments. Military pressure or economic stability?